I wrote this book after my best friend died, and this is a big thing that sparked like the intense passion. I believe I started struggling with depression at around 8 years old. I started having thoughts like, I don't belong here. I don't know why I'm here. I might be better off not being here. Every single older expert pretty much says it's social media. I don't think social media is the root cause. We're monetizing people's pain. We're not finding real solutions that would actually help people because people want a quick fix. The two greatest predictors of depression are whether or not someone has their basic needs met and whether or not they belong.
Why is this generation struggling more than the previous ones, do you think? Welcome back to Walk With Me Brother. Today, I am sitting down with a very special guest, Aly. Hello. And Aly is an author, researcher, and social innovator whose work focuses on systematic roots of Gen Z mental health crisis. She holds a master's degree in social innovation and is the author of Out of Focus, which challenges the idea that this crisis can be solved with better coping skills or more self-care. She's also the founder of The Belonging Lab, a nonprofit focused on suicide prevention, belonging, and community-based approaches to mental health. What I respect most about Aly's work and why I'm excited to have her on today is that I'm really looking forward to digging in what she doesn't ask what is wrong with the young people. She asks what's wrong with the systems they're growing up inside, the education, media, work, policy, and culture. Today, we are going to talk honestly about the surface level solutions that keep failing us and what real prevention actually looks like. This conversation today isn't about blame, it is about responsibility. And some of the initiatives we're starting here at Walk With Me Brother, I think are completely aligned with what Aly. Aly, welcome onto the show with you and your beautiful little guest today. Hello.
Thank you for having us.
I think she likes me.
I'm hoping she doesn't cause too much of a ruckus today.
What I like to do, Aly, with every guest is talk a little bit about your early life, where you grew up, where you're from, how did you get involved in mental health? So whereabouts did you grow up?
I grew up in Carlsbad, California, with a very sort of normal middle-class family. Grew up doing all the normal stuff, the sports, gymnastics, music. I was a very creative kid, and I had a very good childhood.
So from Carlsbad, you've been living there, you've been obviously doing your thing. I've been following you on social. One of my team members had kind of said, like, this girl is awesome for what her messaging with what she's doing for something that we're passionate about here, which is obviously, I want to talk today, we're going to talk about a little bit about your book and your foundation, which is The Belonging Lab. So first off, let's talk about the book, which, thank you. It's called Out of Focus. You can buy this at online. You can buy this on Amazon. Where else can you buy this? And I'm going to have a link in the description below.
Amazon's the best place.
So explain to me the book Out of Focus. Where did the concept for why Gen Z's mental health crisis is more complex than you think? Where did the idea of this come from?
Yeah, after my best friend passed away, I became very, very interested in researching why this is happening, why so many kids are dying from fentanyl, why so many people are dying by suicide. And I feel like nobody's really talking about it. Like literally when I had done research to start my book, I found that there were like maybe 2 or 3 other books that existed like mine in the world. And I was like, do people not genuinely understand what's truly at stake? Literally right now in our country, 40 to 50% of high school students say they're sad or hopeless.
There's horrible.
Thousands and thousands of kids that consider suicide every day. Thousands and thousands of people who die by suicide every year. And people aren't talking about it. And I just am dumbfounded why this is still something we refuse to talk about or do something about. I mean, we look at there are thousands of people who are unhoused on our streets that we just ship away either to jail or we hide them. You know, this is a crisis that is so impactful. And I do this work. I talk to so many people every week. that tell me their stories about how they've lost someone. It impacts pretty much everybody. Everyone you talk to, they will say they know someone who's died by suicide.
Mm-hmm.
Really is that impactful. And so I decided I wanted to talk about what really happened from someone who's lived it.
Okay, that's great. And then explain to me and our people listening today, the Belonging Lab. What is your nonprofit and what do you advocate for?
Yeah, I launched the Belonging Lab this last August because I believe that at the heart of the mental health crisis, one of the most important things we need to address is belonging. Belonging is probably one of the most important things that no one really addresses. And so I wanted to address that.
The Gen Z, it's such an important kind of demographic of today's nation. I worry about my kids' future. So how did you get involved with mental health within that Gen Z kind of demographic?
Mental health became really important to me from a young age. I believe I started struggling with depression at around 8 years old. I had a traumatic brain injury in a ski accident, and I missed a lot of school. And I had this friend group that, I had known since preschool. And it was interesting, I think, missing school and then also just, having an injury and being a bit different. My personality, I think, changed a bit. And that was when I started to struggle with fitting in. I deeply struggled with fitting in. And I think that's really where I first started recognizing how important belonging is. And I can remember as early back as 8, I was alone. And I remember my parents were gone. And I started having thoughts like, I don't belong here. I don't know why I'm here. And I might be better off not being here.
So what age were you when you started having those thoughts?
8.
8. So it all happened at 8. Is that when the accident happened as well?
Yeah.
So it was all, wow, that's so traumatic.
And so mental health, I think just naturally I became fascinated with it because I struggled with it. And I started doing mental health research starting at age 14. I won the science fair with the study I did. And then every year in the science fair, I won like first place. It sounds like a brag, but I was very passionate about it. And so I did research in mental health. And one of the studies I did actually, I think later on researchers used to make school start times later, because what I had found was that lack of sleep in young people and the early school start times are very detrimental for mental health. And so from there, that's just been a passion. And then in college, I focused more on the macro stuff, sociology, and then went on to grad school to study sort of the social innovation of it. But it's been a passion for a long time.
Thank you for watching Walk With Me Brother. We are a relatively new podcast. Without your support, without your help, we cannot grow. So please subscribe. Please give us a thumbs up. Please share our episodes. We've got every single week. We have entrepreneurs, doctors, veterans, people, experts within their field, all talking everything related to mental health. So if you haven't catched our previous episodes, go and watch them now. But follow us along and please support our amazing journey. So when you were having these thoughts at 8 years old and, very concerning and traumatic, is this something you told your parents about? Did you keep it to yourself? Did you express that? And if so, what was the feedback you got?
I was very bullied at the time too. I was very isolated. I told my parents, and I have the best parents in the world, but they are very typical of a lot of parents of Gen Zers. I write about this in my book, but I think a lot of us were, 1, overparented, and then 2, a lot of us were invalidated and emotionally neglected. And it wasn't on purpose, but because our parents had this, so our grandparents, I believe, grew up during the Great Depression. So our parents sort of had this aftermath of that. And so they grew up with these ideals of career, and so there was less emphasis on emotion. Mm-hmm. And so I really feel my generation had a lot of emotional neglect. But yeah, I told my parents, and they're just like, no, it's not real, or oh, you're over exaggerating, or it's not that big of a deal. That's just
kids' imagination. Yeah. So they kind of put that affirmation back to you. So where you are today, so obviously you've gone on to become more than passionate about this since probably the age of 8 to 14 to your college. And so what is it, you just mentioned there, we're going to talk about your book in a bit, but what is it that you're doing today? And I kind of reeled off a lot of in the intro. There's so many things that you're involved in now. Where does Alli kind of sit in the landscape of kind of obviously jobs that you're kind of currently working on?
Yeah, it's hard to boil me down to one thing. It's kind of funny, but I wrote this book after my best friend died, and this is a big thing that sparked like the intense passion. I'd always had the passion, but the intense passion where I'm like, okay, I want to change the whole freaking world, was after she died, because it was truly the hardest thing I'd ever been through. And
how old were you then when she died?
It was in 2020 during the pandemic.
Okay.
Yeah. She was very, very isolated, and unfortunately made decisions that ended her life.
So she died of suicide?
I actually found out 2 days ago that it wasn't, which is really interesting. Okay. But it was fentanyl. So it was mental health related. Mm-hmm. She struggled with BPD, which a lot of people who struggle with BPD use substances and she was very casually suicidal, and she spoke about it, and I knew she struggled. And so for years I thought that was what had happened. And I had a call with her mom a couple days ago to tell her mom, update her mom about my nonprofit. And she said, Alli, we put them in jail. I'm like, put who in jail? And so the person who sold her the drugs that she had taken is in jail now, which is it's a lot to process, but unfortunately, Gen Z, the leading causes of death are gun violence, overdose, and suicide. And all three of those things are mental health related. I mean, even gun violence, we grew up in such a different time. Other generations were worried about earthquakes and fire drills. Our generation, we were told to hide under a death, and that we're basically powerless to being shot up. Yeah. We had that in the back of our minds. And so that whenever there's a shooting at a school, for example, antidepressants in that city, in that area, go up significantly.
I can only imagine. Yeah.
So it's all of these issues are a huge problem. Yeah.
Well, I can only speak from experience having bipolar and know my own story of self-medicating is what the professionals call it. I mean, it's relief. It's, we were just talking off camera about, alcohol, drugs. Me growing up, there was not really so much out there about mental health. So if we had those voices and those theories, the only way to kind of shut them down would be to, and I loose quotely, I don't really like this term self-medicate, but, addiction is rife, and you've talked about the gun violence, addiction, and obviously suicide. So from your research, why is this generation struggling more than the previous ones, do you think?
Yeah, there are so many older experts talking about Gen Z, and they all sort of say the same thing. And their answer is it's social media. Every single older expert pretty much says it's social media. I mean, Jonathan Haidt, he talks about, social media, the algorithms, and then a bit about parenting and free play. I don't think social media is the root cause. And I think that's controversial for a lot of people because it seems like the most obvious answer because we're the first digital natives. We've grown up very highly addicted to our phones. Do I think it flames it? Oh yeah, I think it's a huge flame. But do I think it's a root cause? No. Because imagine social media was just science videos, educational things, teaching you how to cook, cute animals, things that were not rage bait. We wouldn't be where we are, right? If it were just those things.
Yep.
But our culture is what fuels sex sells, rage bait sells, news terrifying news, things that aren't even true, misinformation. That's what sells. And the algorithms have become really, really addictive, and we've found a way to monetize. But no, I think that it's the culture that is fueling our mental health crisis. And it's a culture of we're monetizing people's pain, and we're not finding real solutions that would actually help people because people want a quick fix. And we've created a system that works okay.
I mean, I think it's the first, if you look at the first pinned video on my Instagram profile, I pinned it, it's the first one. And it's a pretty lengthy video, but I talk about the system is broken, no matter how you look at it. I mean, it doesn't matter if you look from Gen Z, Alpha, Millennial, my kind of Generation X. Something's not working, right? Because the suicide rates are up. It doesn't matter how people say, yeah, there's more people population. People say, yeah, it's social media. And, me specifically, I'm focusing on men. Men just don't talk. But I think it's a bit of everything, to be honest with you. One question I've got for you, and I haven't asked anybody who is because all my friends are obviously a bit older. And I've just saw this coming in Australia. Do you support then no social media for under 16-year-olds? That's something that they're doing in Australia. I don't think it would ever happen here, but is that something that you would support, do you say? Or was that? Yeah.
But I think what's deeper at play is our economy and the fact that a lot of people are not having their basic needs met. And what I mean by basic needs, like, for example, if you compare our generation to the generations growing up in the 1960s. In 1964, the cost of college was about $500. Now, the cost of college, the lower cost is about $15,000. That's about, when you adjust for inflation, that's about 7 times higher. You think about healthcare, it's about 7 times higher since 1970. But our wages have not gone up in a way that's sustainable. The cost of housing has gone up astronomically, the cost of food. And, if you look at, it's interesting, like the cost of cheap things that we don't really need, like clothes or TVs or phones, those things are cheap and accessible. But then the things we really need, like housing, healthcare, and food, have gone up a lot. And minimum wage cannot sustain that. So that's a huge, huge problem. And if you look Gen Z, when the Great Recession happened in 2008, about 23% of us grew up in single parent households.
Yes, yeah.
And then by 2012, one half of Gen Z grew up in poverty, which is higher than any generation ever. So that's really, really serious, because that means that half of Gen Z grew up without their basic needs met. Mm-hmm. That's going to cause mental health struggles. If you do not have your basic needs met, you cannot have good mental health.
If you are struggling right now, or if you know somebody who is, please talk to somebody. Please reach out to someone. Talk to a friend or call a trusted helpline. In the US, you can reach the National Crisis and Helpline by texting and dialing 988. If you're outside the US, you can find help on findahelpline.com, and I will put all of that information in the description below. So please reach out to someone if you're struggling, or if you know someone who is. Looking at Gen Z today and the mental health, I know there's no quick fix here and what we can do or should do, but what would be the initiatives there that you would like to kind of us to look at from a bigger picture standpoint?
So, like, bigger picture, there's a lot happening that affects our mental health that we have to change. I mean, in my book, I write it's more complex than you think, because there are a lot of different things happening at once that are impacting us. For example, toxins are really, really bad. I mean, we have developed really cheap products that have forever chemicals. I mean, our president had just passed something to make it legal to spray PFAS on our crops. That's going to have a big impact. We're poisoning ourselves to have cheap, goods, and it's a problem. And they've found that these forever chemicals and these toxins are having big impacts on mental health too, that we don't talk about, we don't think about. I had found one study that I think it was Harvard that did it. Yeah, they found that school drinking fountains during the time we were growing up had way too high levels of lead in like most of the counties around the US. So that means a lot of kids were just ingesting lead in their drinking fountains growing up. And lead has been associated with behavior issues and other mental health concerns. I mean, our nutrition has changed a lot. During World War II, there was a lot of shortages of food. And so scientists were really smart. They created bigger, more calorically dense foods, but then there was less nutrition, less vitamins. Most of us have vitamin deficiencies as a result now because of the way we farm food. I mean, I could go on and on about the ways in which we have it very different. I mean, also sleep. We're not sleeping as well because of light pollution in our phones and the blue light. So we're not getting as much sleep. Sleep is tied, very, very tied to mental health. It's
100%.
probably one of the most important things.
Totally.
And I was even thinking about this last night. It's like, well, why do both rich and poor people struggle? It's a universal problem, mental health. And I believe it has to do with stress and sleep and community. And so when you're not having good sleep, you're not having good nutrition, you're not having good community, all of those things add up. So that's where it can affect everyone, but it does, I think, predominantly affect people who have less of their basic needs met because it's harder.
Yeah, I agree. Today, so much mental health talk or advice kind of puts the responsibility back on the individual. If you notice, like the gurus, you mentioned about the doctors and all this, and you should be doing this. And at what point do you think the personal responsibility kind of becomes misplaced blame? Because have you noticed that? Is it just me? Like everyone's
Yeah, you notice nothing I mentioned was it was the person's fault, right?
Exactly, yeah.
I do think there is some person hopefully you didn't catch my dog. There is some personal imperative, right? When we're struggling, we do have to have the agency to seek help. And the help that's out there, the good help, that not all help is good. I get criticized a lot because I talk about how a lot of therapists are shitty. There's a lot of bad therapists.
I agree with that.
And I share that because if people aren't getting good therapeutic results, it's because they have a shitty therapist. Find another one. There are good therapists.
Well, just at what point does the personal responsibility become misplaced blame, basically?
I really do think that we have essentially put all mental health from really the beginning of time. This has been going on forever, that we blame the individual. If you look back at like medieval times, they would burn you at the stake if you're mentally ill. I mean, or they would put you in isolation. So this has been forever, right? But what I'm hoping for is for us to recognize that a lot of people who struggle with their mental health, it has to do with not belonging or not having their basic needs met. And until we start to recognize that as a society, people are going to continue to struggle. And the less we include people and treat people like they're human, the more it's going to be a problem.
So when we say to kind of your generation, and we tell that generation to cope versus changing conditions, what's your response there? What do you feel?
Gen Z needs more resilience. I have no doubt about that. We need a lot more resilience. We are very individualist, selfish, and a lot of the stereotypes are true, honestly. What I do with my nonprofit is we're trying to build community, and I keep facing kind of the same thing where a lot of us are flaky and it's hard to organize things because people end up canceling at the last minute, or they don't have the skills to build real friendships because they've learned to be so individualistic and to really be kind of selfish. So I do think in that way, we all need to learn to be a little less selfish and have more resilience. And there's this disposal culture that I absolutely hate, this cancel culture of this person does one thing wrong. They need to just, they're not worth my time. I hate that. And I think that's part of what's wrong with our society right now is we've boiled people down to almost objects that we can just throw away if they're no good for us. And it's really, really hurting us because it also puts a guard up for ourselves because then we can't necessarily be fully ourselves if we're afraid that people are just going to buy into this disposal culture.
So selfish and self-care are two different things. So, I mean, I'm all about self-care. I'm a big advocate for self-care in every aspect. So how do we kind of educate that self-care feeling versus the selfish feeling? Because that's where we would obviously need someone like yourself to kind of educate. This is an education problem. This is not like do this or awareness, or it's obviously an education problem that we've got to message through our channels. So how would you handle that self-care avenue?
Well, the self-care industry, I think, is now like $1 billion industry, where we're told that we need to go on expensive retreats and buy expensive face masks and bath bombs and products that we don't need. I think to me, self-care is more just having an understanding of when you need to rest and when you need to reset. Everything else is just things we've commodified. We've commodified pain in every single way. We've tried to sell quick fixes that don't actually work, or they really don't work that well. And I think at the end of the day, the most simple things are the things that work.
I always use an analogy. I'll use an analogy here of Amazon, right? So Amazon in my day didn't exist. You order something online, you have to wait 2 and 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks for it to arrive. If it's not here in 2 days now, I'm like, God, I'm not going to order that then. It's like, if we don't get it in 2 clicks, everything is about how quickly we can get things done, right? There's no patience anymore. And I say that from me. I don't say that, I speak on behalf of anyone else. I did something yesterday, and I think I texted you on Saturday night, and I didn't text you yesterday because every Sunday now, I don't touch my phone. And
it's amazing.
And it's something I would encourage anyone to do. And I started to think about this, and you come onto today's show, and digital life is not optional for Gen Z. You've had no for our generation and above, we have the option to say, I can do that. For your generation, you've never had that option. You've had iPads and computers at school. We didn't have computer at school. So for you, in your generation, it's been, here's an iPad, here's a phone, it's in your face. You've got to be like, I'm privy to be able to take it. And it was the first day outside of when I've been doing endurance sports and long distance running, but where I've put my phone in a drawer. And it was, I said to my wife last night, it was liberating. The world's still turning today, right?
Yeah.
Did I miss it? Not really. I'd already pre-warned my mum and dad and my brother that if you try and call me on a Sunday now, you're not going to get a reply unless it's an emergency. How do you, just telling that to your, does that kind of scare you to not have a device? Is that something that you would like to practice? Tell me, like, from your perspective on the whole digital media side, because that's something I'm fascinated about.
I think it's such an incredible tool, and we've turned a tool into something we consume. And because of that overconsumption, we've become less creative. I talk about it in my book that we have a creativity crisis, and that creativity is kind of at the heart of being human, like purpose, creativity, creation. And there's this one woman who does a lot of research in creativity and how important it is and like the really deep impacts it has on our mental health. So when I hear what you're saying, that we're such digital natives and what the hell do we do without our devices, I hear you putting your phone away on a Sunday. I'm like, ooh, I should really do that. That's actually a phenomenal idea. But I think what's even deeper with that is that we've just learned to consume. But what we really need to start doing is create. And so I think if people start thinking towards creating, it will be a much better thing for them. And so instead of spending hours on TikTok, go pick up a notebook and write something. Go outside for a hike. Like, we need to start doing instead of consuming.
Okay. It's so interesting to hear, because we always say, like, me and my friends, and, because back in our day, we didn't have phones or anything like that. There was no, you look at some of and I lived in Spain for quite a while, and I lived in the nightlife there, and there was no phones. And something that they introduced in Ibiza this year, I think, was in some of the clubs, no phones in the club, because you've got to be in the moment. I mean, we had cameras, of course. We had those kind of like disposable cameras on occasions and things like that. And at the end of the summer, we'd get our film developed, and you'd be kind of exciting to do that. But I just feel like I don't know, even me now, like, I don't know if I could go back to living like that, because like you say. So do you think the algorithm driven platforms, are they the ones shaping the identity right now in the self-worth? Did they have a lot of the explaining to do? Is this something that we could push more there? Because
I think the culture that we feed media, whether it's TV, news, or phones, it's the culture that really needs to be thought about. I wrote about Hannah Montana in my book. Hannah Montana was this show that came out when I was a teenager. I was obsessed. I really wanted to be Miley Cyrus, and I got a wig and everything. But that was sort of what a lot of sociologists are saying was the foundation of influencer culture.
really,
That show. And
for somebody who doesn't know Hannah Montana, explain. So come on.
It's such a cute show, and I think she actually grows up in Malibu or something, and she's this brunette girl she's a normal girl, but secretly she's a rock star, and she's secretly famous when she puts her wig on. And it was just, you're following this beautiful girl through her life, and
it's like,
you identify with the character, but there was a lot of problematic stuff. Like, she's wealthy, she's white, she's got like good parents, like you're watching something that isn't necessarily achievable. And so a lot of kids grew up with this idea, oh, I want to be famous because she's famous, or all of that. And then other shows popped up around the same time, like the Kardashians came up in 2007-ish. And you look at the Kardashians, what started happening after the Kardashians became popular? The BBL surgery. Those went way, way up when they were popular. And that's because the media...
the Brazilian butt lift, right?
Yep. The media influences our culture, and our culture influences our media. They're both, it's like a bi-directional relationship, but the things that we are fed and the things that we show interest in that make the media producers money is what they're going to push out. And so sex sells, the idea of being famous and rich and all these things sells. And so that's, I think, what sort of started this influencer culture that a lot of kids are aspiring to be now, which is, in my opinion, disgusting. We know more names of celebrities and designer brands and all these things than we know animals, plants, science. We don't value important things like science or the environment or beautiful literature. We don't think about those things in the way that we used to, because that's what our culture has changed into.
For me, then, and would you talk about my Sunday episode there? And I just want to make it clear, I don't think logging off for one day is the answer. So it's not really a real solution. And I think just how, like you've said there about the media, the social media platforms, how it's shaping the algorithms. How do we change like that? How do we kind of even like just put like a stop in the works to help the mental health of the Gen Zers now? Like what do we do? Because I'll be honest, I'm a little bit lost in how I can help. All I can do is probably reach out to men, young men who are the age of 16 to 25 and explain my story and let them know there is another way. That's from my perspective. That's all I can say. This is kind of older 46-year-old dude, white dude walking across the that's the only thing I can do. I'm not feet on the ground like you are. So how do we do it? Like, how do we help?
I believe it's in some ways extremely difficult and extremely simple at the same time. I just did a study and I just analyzed the results last week. It's a pilot study that I had done. And what I found was that the two greatest predictors of depression are whether or not someone has their basic needs met and whether or not they belong. Those two things. And so it really is that simple and complex at the same time. And so what can we all do? It's actually so simple. And that is help the people in our lives feel like they matter, that they're valued, and that they belong. And so many of us, we don't check in on our friends.
No.
And oftentimes when we do check in, it might be too late.
Yep.
We don't really get to know people. Really. We're so focused on ourselves.
Yep.
And a lot of times we don't organize things with our community. We go home after work and we watch Netflix and we go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
What I advocate for and what I'm trying to do with my nonprofit and what I deeply believe in is organizing spaces that make people feel valued and know that they belong. And that is something we can do completely for free, that we don't take advantage of. And I know right now we live in a very polarized time. We live in a very weird time right now where a lot of people aren't getting along. But what I really advocate for is to do the best we can to push that aside and start seeing each other as human. And I am upset at times because I see there are a lot of apps and groups and new businesses popping up that are commodifying connection. Like there's this thing called Real Root Gals, and I think it's in San Diego. It might be around the nation, but they charge money for connection. A lot of these different organizations charge for events and things to help people connect, but it really bothers me. And I won't do that with my nonprofit. I won't charge for events because I believe at the heart of what we really need to do is to connect and build belonging in our communities again.
Agree. So what conversations would you say are we avoiding because they're uncomfortable?
It's a very good question. I think most of us avoid going past surface level. I don't know why, but most of us, we don't go deeper. I think there's a fear of being seen, even
What
though
do you
we
mean?
need
So
to
like
be.
if we ask each other, how are you doing? That's about, that's it.
Yeah.
And you think you've done my job because I've asked, I've checked in on you.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
We're not ready for sometimes the hard replies, are we?
Yeah. How often have you asked, well, maybe you're different, but imagine the average person. How much do we think the average person asks their friends, how is your mental health?
Never.
No,
Not
never.
in a man's world, but personally.
And in a woman's world either. And
Yeah.
I go out of my way to do that with my friends. But I have maybe 2 people in my life that do that for me. And I don't think I'm unique at all. I think that a lot of us don't have people in our lives that check in on us and that go past surface level. I don't know what it is, but I think it's because we become so selfish.
Agree. So we probably on this, I can imagine today there's probably quite a few parents watching or listening in because I think they're trying to be in tune with their kids now. So what kind of conversations can parents have with their kids? I've asked this to a couple of guests before. What kind of conversation, and it'd be nice to hear your perspective from the other side. What's good questions that parents should be asking their kids of that kind of Gen Z mold demographic? One would be how's your mental health?
Right. Like, how's your
mental health? Is that something
health?
a parent should ask?
Yeah. Yeah. In suicide prevention training, they say to ask very directly about suicide. I think it's the same about mental health. I think parents should be asking directly. And I think it's important for parents to create a safety within their home. And that's something a lot of parents may struggle to do, but a kid's not going to answer if they're not in a safe space to do so. So I think it starts with being open and not punishing a kid when they do share the truth about how they're feeling too. I know some parents might hear their kids say they're struggling and get defensive and not really take it seriously, or they take it personally. I think parents need to learn to not take it personally and listen and create that culture within the home where their kids feel safe and seen. I think parents should also really take seriously whether or not the kid feels good at the school that they're at. If the kid is being bullied or struggling at school, I think the parent should very strongly consider moving them to another school or trying something else. I know for me, I ended up doing independent studies and it saved my life. So I think that that's definitely something parents should consider too. And then I also really think that if they can afford it, finding a mental health provider, that's good. And if they might not find a provider that's good right away, there's a lot of shitty providers. I talk about that a lot. But finding a good provider can make a huge difference if they do find their kid is struggling a bit.
We said something there that kind of irritates me, and one of our initiatives is if they can afford it. So this is like with Walk Me Brother, our non-negotiable is everybody. If we talking, we talk about all these Bill of Rights, really, right? What an American can have and have access to. It was written hundreds of years ago, and then modernization, social media, and like corruption and news didn't exist then. So the Bill of Rights for mental health was never something that was. I don't know even if my lifetime this will happen, but that's something that no individual should have to worry about is if you can afford it. And that's one thing that irritates me. And one reason why we set up Walk My Brother, everybody should be able to access mental health help, whether you can afford it or not.
I advocate for universal basic healthcare in my book. I think that's a very, very important solution. I think universal basic income is a solution that I propose as well. Everyone should have healthcare. And I wrote an op-ed actually recently how it's interesting dentistry. Dentistry used to be a part of the healthcare system. And back in the day, the dentists just weren't taken seriously as medical providers. So they kind of branched off and did their own thing. Mental health isn't taken seriously. And so one thing I'm thinking is like, why don't we just branch off or something and have our own sort of insurance system? Because one of the things that a lot of providers struggle with is the insurance system. And so most providers don't accept insurance because dealing with the insurance system is insane. Like they oftentimes don't even get paid. Yeah. Most therapists can barely afford to live, which is insanity.
Yeah, crazy.
So that is something I also think is important is whether it's like some sort of different healthcare system or something, we need to make it accessible to everybody.
I always want to ask all of our guests if there's a message out there today that you can share that's going to be impactful and meaningful and change, what advice and hope and help would you give out there today?
I want to advise anybody listening to this to create spaces in your world for the people that you love and the people around you, and even people you meet just in your day-to-day basis. Find a way to make each and every person that you interact with know that they are valued, that their life matters, and that they're important to you, that their life has value. And that could be done by organizing events. It could be done by having people in your living room every Sunday, or just, it could be, it's free. Yeah. Connection is free. And I think that the more we create a culture in our society of truly caring and valuing each other, the more there will be a difference. Empathy. We need empathy.
So what happens, last question for you today is what happens if nothing changes? What's your kind of mystic powers if nothing changes?
If nothing changes, the numbers are going to continue to go up because we live in a system that's crisis intervention and it's not prevention based. We need to create a society that values prevention. And until we do, more people are going to continue to pass away.
It's scary. And it's something that hopefully between the two of us, we can change over this coming year. So, Alli, I think some of the the numbers and the resources and the research you've done is just so powerful. And I encourage anyone out there today to go and buy your book and follow you on social media. We're going to put all of your links below, and obviously follow you. We'll be following you along this journey. So I want to thank you for coming on today and being with us here with your lovely little pup down here. So it's been a pleasure having you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Aly, your work has reminded us that Gen Z mental health crisis isn't a mystery and it isn't a personal failure. It's a reflection of the system we've built and the conditions young people are being asked to survive. Ignoring that isn't a neutral, it's a choice. So thank you again, and we'll continue to support you in all that you do.
Thank you.